Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again. And today we have another special guest with us. We have self-realized Artem Boytsov from the True Freedom Teachings YouTube channel. Now, True Freedom's Teachings is a nonprofit organization founded in 2021 with a mission to support each individual's personal transformation of the way to love, joy, happiness, and equanimity.
Pretty excited about this one. I first saw this guy on a panel interview, and he just said some stuff that stood out. I was like, he's pretty wise, and then I told you about him. I was like, we gotta try to get this guy.
Yeah. Well, we won't keep you guys waiting. Let's get into it. Artem Boytsov, it is so good to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. One place we like to begin usually is for a place where you can tell our audience a little bit about yourself, kind of this spiritual journey, how you got to where you are right now as a spiritual teacher, helping people. Where did this kind of begin?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, and it's very nice to make your acquaintance.
You too.
So I wasn't looking for it, interestingly enough. I consider myself lucky in this regard because even though I wasn't looking for it and it happened quite unexpectedly to me, I still formed some spiritual ideas and beliefs that were destroyed later, quite painfully. And so I can only imagine how much wrong spiritual ideas and beliefs people who are into spirituality for a very long time form. So I was kind of an atheist for most of my life, which is, believe it or not, an advantage because you believe less things and you kind of
I can see that, yeah.
And my experience and my observation of the world suggests that atheists are oftentimes even more prone to things like depression, which is actually an indicator that they're closer to reality than the people who kind of think that everything is okay with the world. And so I was a deeply struggling atheist. I was a deeply suffering atheist. I was suffering myself. I was abused as a child, not physically or anything like very seriously, but I would say I was quite neglected. And I was trying to figure out for most of my life what is wrong with this world and what is wrong with people. But of course, only until the direction of the exploration. Only, of course, I became the direction of the exploration. Then the insight came. So, but nevertheless, it was a very challenging and humbling experience. I was studying economic systems, for example. I was born in Soviet Union before its collapse, so I lived for 13 years. I was 13 when the Soviet Union collapsed. I lived through the collapse of it, which was a very hectic, violent, and crime-ridden time. And so then I moved to the United States, and I thought this was a paradise, of course. And then I quickly realized that no, this society has its own share of problems, and some of the problems are even on the magnitude in some areas worse than what was in the Soviet Union. In most areas better, but in some areas worse.
Then Rocky IV came out.
Rocky IV. Rocky IV. I watched when I was back in Russia, I think. No. That's a new one or something. Yeah. I don't remember it. No, but yeah,
that was the one.
That's where he goes to Russia and he fights the Russian.
I was referring to things like mass incarceration, for example.
Yeah.
Or the inaccessibility of healthcare or of education. I mean, it's not like healthcare in the Soviet Union was like the best, but it was at the very least accessible, and education was accessible, much more accessible than in the United States. So income inequality, things like that. So I was also studying this phenomena. So I was prone to depressions. I spent like maybe half of my adult life in depressions. And basically, and also, it just so happened that, like most people, I was seeking happiness. Everyone is seeking happiness. Like, unless you're enlightened, you're seeking happiness. That's pretty much all you do. That's almost everything you do for that. So I was also doing that. And it just so happened that uh, a lot of things was tried and I failed at almost everything. So I was very poor when I was growing up in the Soviet Union. I've also been to Russian military, which I don't recommend. So so and then when I moved to the United States and I joined Google, I was a software engineer at Google Research for about 7 years. I stumbled into some level of financial success, not like major
Yeah.
level, but at least I could buy a car without difficulty, which by the standards of my teenage self in Soviet Union was just an incredible level of wealth. And so that didn't bring me happiness either. I was very unsuccessful with women when I was young. So I was a social reject. I was a geek basically. I was into computers and all of that as a mechanism of escape. So well before geeks became cool. As I often say, geeks became cool when they became rich. So, so back then, it was where social rejects concentrated. So I was kind of one of that, and I always suffered from unrequited love, and I was very unsuccessful with women. And then when I was in my 30s, I kind of became quite successful with women. So those things, uh, uh, financial wealth, well, let's say success. So financial success or success in romantic relationships, uh, those things that are postulated by the society as something that will bring you happiness, did not bring me happiness. And so it was kind of the end of my rope. I left Google. I had a startup. It failed spectacularly. So I spent most of my VC money without having to show anything for it. It was a very torturous time. I went through a very deep depression with lots of suicidal ideation when I was going through that. And then when it failed, I was kind of just fed up with life. It was just very clear that it's not going anywhere. All of my attempts to find happiness failed, and all I wanted to do, actually at that time, is to dance, party, have sex, and love women. That's basically it was before Enlightenment. It was like,
Hedonic treadmill.
yeah, exactly. Yes. So I was basically it was actually the first step to freedom because at that time the kind of mental landscape at my mind was, fuck all of this. I'm just gonna do whatever I want until I die.
Yeah.
And if I also had some divorces, so like I failed to create a family, I failed to become like rich and famous, or like very wealthy, or like very influential, or whatnot, like what people are dreaming of mostly, right? Being recognized by society, or being loved by someone else. And I was kind of, fuck all of that. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want. And it was kind of scary. I was practicing meditation to some extent because a psychologist that I used to work with, uh, who I later understood was somewhat awake actually. Uh, uh, so I got lecked out. I was very lucky with him. I'm very
Yeah.
grateful to him. So when I was going through the worst of my depression, he recommended me a book which is called Taming Your Gremlin. It's kind of a funny
I've read
book
that one.
about the ego, actually.
Audiobook.
I wrote it in printed copy. And also, he recommended me some self-compassion meditation. So that helped a little bit.
Yeah.
Not as much as some things like DMT
Oh
and
wow.
psychedelics. but it still helped a lot. So and I had some experience with meditation, not significant experience, but some experience. And I af so I got into the psytrance world. I got into the psychedelic world. I was taking LSD and dancing at psytrance party, and lots of very strange things started happening there. Lots of insights, which I did not pay much attention to at the time, but there was just some very strange experiences and some very profound experiences. I did not understand back then that it had anything to do with spiritual enlightenment. And so after like 2 or 3 years of that, or maybe less actually, I don't quite remember, maybe a year and a half or 2 years, I felt like something big was about to happen. And I knew that uh, because so kind of had a premonition that I wanted to live very long, and
Wow.
that's the ego speaking, of course. I hope to live for a very long time, but from the egoic perspective, right? It was nearing its death, or the
Oh,
or let's
yes.
the beginning of
Yeah.
its death process, which is
Yeah.
actually quite a long process. Uh, but the authentic self-realization, authentic abiding awareness does feel like death for the ego. That's what the ego is most afraid of. And also, I uh, kind of at that time it begun to uh, be very difficult to smoke even a little bit of cannabis, which I loved, without getting paranoid.
Right.
And so lots of fear started to come up. At that moment, I was basically mostly obsessed with uh, with love and sex and didn't and pleasure and wasn't very interested much in anything else. So I was very obsessed with Katya, who later became my wife, and so it was beginning kind of more and more difficult to enjoy psychedelics without sinking into fear.
Look at.
And and I started reading about enlightenment because it felt at that time it felt like it's the only kind of my mind was telling me this story. There's the only thing that's left to do, basically, in this world, which is some kind of there is some kind of truth to it because that
Yeah.
world back then was my mind. So, as I sometimes say to my students, enlightenment is the last project of the ego. It's always the last project of the ego.
Last nightmare, sometimes people call it.
Yep, yep. And so there was like this kind of deep premonition that something big was about to happen. I started reading about enlightenment. I didn't understand anything at all. Uh, I read Jed McKenna's book, so I did not understand them, of course. But uh, I kind of got scared by them a little. Which is good. I mean, I always also say to my students, if you don't understand something, don't pretend that you do. So it's good to kind of be honest. So I read them. I didn't understand them, but it was quite confusing and scary at times. And basically, a few months later, I uh, went to Psytrance Festival, and I took some LSD, not a lot of it. Like, I don't remember how much I took, but like maybe one or two tabs, not a lot, not a lot. But it was one of the most fearful trips in my life, and there was an incredible amount of terror there. And then there was laughter. There was deep insight about how all of this was self-created, and uh, and basically I did not come back from the trip. So the ego did not come back from the trip.
Oh. There's.
So
Yeah.
it
Sorry.
doesn't mean that there was a completely no ego at that point, right? So that's what most people call enlightenment. I call it self-realization. So I call the state, Adyashanti calls it abiding awareness. So when the identification with the ego is completely broken, and you don't identify with the ego again, right? The ego still exists at this point. So it's not the end of suffering. It's a tremendous relief because you don't identify with your suffering anymore. And experientially, it feels very different. So experientially, it feels like I am consciousness. That's what I am. And the person that I thought I was never real. And so and so that happened to me that night. Uh, and so the biggest surprise for me was that it didn't go away. So I thought it was like some kind of temporary state.
Disassociation maybe or
No,
something.
I didn't think that was disassociation. No, I
No.
I kind of I was in this in the state of consciousness or similar state of consciousness before. Sorry, on LSD. But what was interesting about this is that it felt much deeper and that it didn't go away. So I expected it to go away, basically. I expected that I would wake up the next day and kind of be the person again,
Yeah.
right? But it never did. And then and what followed then, there was just a tremendous amount of things. So a tremendous amount of emotional release and laughter and tears and fear and lots of stuff as all the conditioning got slowly over the course of subsequent years uh, illuminated by consciousness and let go of. And after that, basically, I could not meditate. I meditated for 4 or 5 hours every day, just because I wanted to. I continued using psychedelics actually, so they continued to bring up more and more uh, conditioning. And for the first 3 years, I cried every day. There was so much fear. There was lots of rage. There's a lot of stuff to take in and to realize how we got conditioned to this way, and every little like crook and every little trigger that gets exposed in the spiritual path. It's a very thorough process, actually, a thorough destructive process. And so I never fluctuated back and forth, which is rare. Uh, Most people do. So that's my experience, and other teachers say the same thing. I mean, it's my experience with my students, and other teachers say the same thing. And I continued until basically meditation stopped doing anything much, and even psychedelics in large doses are a very mild experience for me right now.
Amazing. You said so many things that are worth unpacking further in that. I thought it was kind of interesting that your ego almost felt this doom, like its
Mhm.
time was coming up. And I remember personally, I've been through that. I think that even one aspects of someone's character that can be the sense sometimes somebody will feel like something's coming to an end. There'll almost be a mourning or a dread sometimes, even before enlightenment. I think as people change, that can happen. But how much more significant when it's curtains for the ego? It knows it's not going to be behind the wheel anymore.
Yes.
That's just the one thing I wanted to talk about. Was there anything that came to
Oh,
your mind?
it seems like you took the school of hard knocks. Like I don't know. Some people kind of gradually, kind of like grow into this realization, but then there's like the spontaneous or the quick version. I'm curious, like how did your life change right after that happened? Like I'm sure you had relationships, you had a job, or something was going on in your life. What happened to all that after that experience?
Okay, great question. Let me try to address it. So, yeah, I agree with you. It was kind of Fort Knox. It was very dramatic. It was very intense. So my unfolding was very intense. That's why it was relatively quick in like, uh, Earth time, right? So, what I also oftentimes say to my students is that actually the amount of conditioning that you have, the amount of conditioning that needs to be eliminated, is the same, and it's just a question of how quickly you go through it. So when you go through it quickly, then the experience is intense. It becomes intense. That's, by the way, the same difference between sober meditation and meditation with responsible use of psychedelics. The experience is more intense. That's why it feels like time subjectively flows much slower, right? So how you subjectively perceive time is a function of how intense the experience is. If the experience is very intense, it will feel like it's taking forever. So something similar happened in my. I don't know why. Like sometimes people ask me why. I don't know, but I wanted to like go fast and intense. I wasn't afraid of intensity, and I was kind of welcoming it. Not to say that it was easy. It was extraordinarily difficult. But for some reason, I was pulled into it deeper and deeper and deeper. And so it's not a preferred path, actually. So I think it's important to make this note. And as Jason, am I correct?
Justin?
Oh, Justin, I'm really sorry. I'm
That's
better.
okay. I had a teacher that called me Jason an entire semester, and I just went with it.
James and Justin. I'm bad with names, but I'm good with faces. So and as Justin commented, some people experience grief and mourning well before what I would call self-realization, or other people would call enlightenment, well before abiding awareness, sahaja samadhi. I experienced most of this afterwards, like tremendous amount of grief. But a lot of people experience it before. A lot of people experience deeper insights into their shame or anger well before also abiding awareness is established. And
Some
that's
some some of it I call, sorry to interrupt. Some of it I call auto exorcism. Like we
yep.
went up to our cottage recently, and whenever we go up there, I spend hours alone in a room, and the amount of bioenergetic exorcism that has to happen. Like I'm coming down, he's like, "You seem fine." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going up there, and there's the rage in there. It's energetically in there, and so it's you got to twist and kind of doing freelance yoga just to get it all out, and of course there's the crying parts and everything like that. So I think it sounds scary, I think, but the scary thing may be unchecked all that stuff. The scary thing might be a whole lifetime of that stuff that doesn't
Yes.
get realized and then let go.
Yes, yes, and you described it so beautifully. It actually is uh, does very much looks like auto exorcism, and
Exorcism is
it's often
frightening.
it's re literally like you would scream or
Yeah.
do movements, and it,
Cry.
all of that,
Yeah.
lots of crying, lots of wailing, shaking, all sorts of thermal dysregulation, like hot
Yeah.
flashes, cold flashes. Usually, fear would come with cold lots of very strange movements. So and my students also quite a lot of them go through that
Yeah.
during meditation, even without any psychedelics, just during meditation session or during a video session with me, the body would start moving, and I always encourage it. So it does really much feel like self-exorcism. Absolutely. And yeah, the it sounds very scary, but you're right. It is much scarier to live this way because
Yeah.
for as long as you're living this way, you're living against yourself. And there's also a very interesting thing about fear is that it is perceived as you go through this process, it is oftentimes perceived that it's the fear of death. And from the egoic perspective, that's what it is, but it's not real death. The body survives this process just fine. So what
Yeah.
in reality what it is like every time the fear comes up in meditation very intensely or in psychedelic trip, it is the fear of the experience that will follow. It is the fear of the tears. It is the fear of anger. It is the fear of rage. It's the fear of seeing more of yourself. It's the fear of seeing more of reality, how you really were, how you were driven by pain, how people really are, how people really view you, how you really viewed people. All of this is not pleasant to see, and that's what the fear is.
Right. Looking at shame from the ego's perspective, meaning the ego's looking at shame and it's like, oh, I'm ashamed, and it's reflecting back and forth. Whereas, and I got to be sort of careful here because I'm still in a lot of ways in the seeking area, but versus looking at all those tormenting thoughts and like being unaffected by it, being literally, it's like it's just as relevant as a cloud. It's like that's it, the difference.
Yes, and in reality, shame is just pain. Shame is just expectation of punishment. And while you're in it, while you're consumed by it, of course, it's very difficult to notice. But as you go through more and more of it, and you get closer and closer to the experience itself, and you stop being afraid of it. The less you're afraid of the experience, the more kind of objective view you can you can take on the experience itself. The more you understand how all of this was pain and how it was used to control you. And the interesting thing, not only kind of brainwashed by society who but don't know any better, so not to blame society, but not only how it was used to control you by society, but how you internalized the same mechanisms of control and how
Yeah.
you controlled you, how you were controlling yourself, being in a prison of your own making. And this destruction of this prison is very scary, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
To quickly address also James' question, and try not to forget anything, how my life changed. Everything changed. It's the complete upside down. So I oftentimes say the ego sees the world upside down. So what I thought was love was not love. Uh, about pretty much every one of my perceptions about myself, about others, about the world has undergone a complete shift. People who I thought loved me never really loved me. People who I kind of thought that they don't love me as much just because they, let's say, didn't compliment me or praise me as much. You know, the ego confuses love with praise. Actually, turned out to be one of the most um,
Teachers.
no, no, I don't want. I'm talking about personal relationships. One of the most uh, I don't want to use the word loyal because we're talking about mutual love. Committed, let's say, one of the most authentic, one of the people who loved me most authentically and most deeply. Everything turned upside down. It was a complete kind of restructuring of perception. So everything changed. Everything changed. My life changed. How I perceive life changed. So what I consider pleasure changed. So right now, my pleasure, like the way that I perceive life, is well, first of all, it's a pleasure that isn't that doesn't arise from anything. It's the pleasure of existence. So existence is an ecstasy for me. Existence itself is joy. And then on a day-to-day basis, during the waking state, the pleasure of life is the pleasure of the senses. So I enjoy every sensation. I enjoy what I see. I enjoy what I hear. I enjoy what I feel. I enjoy every sensation. So the emotional life is almost non-existent, and all the emotional pleasures turned out to be pain.
Interesting. The emotional life is almost non-existent. That
Correct.
is a very fascinating statement. So I was wondering if you could, if it's worth appeasing the collective egos that are watching this out there to some degree, in the sense that, because you said everything's different. You know, everything was so different. What I thought was this was actually opposite and all that stuff. I can imagine egos being sort of utterly terrified by that. You know, like this like the biggest plot twist ever. Say there was somebody whose livelihood was a very charactery livelihood, for Pete's sake, like a comedian or something like that, who's sort of made their way from pain alchemized into joy for people, and they put on this facade and they go out there and they tell jokes, and they are like, okay, maybe I don't want to feel suffering anymore, but I still want to be able to, like, can I put my old identity back on? Could I, like, walk around acting like who I was prior to enlightenment? Could I still fit the same role I did? Or is it just not even a matter of that? What can you say about that?
At a certain stage of the unfolding, it's possible. Ultimately, it's not even a matter of that. So ultimately, deep authenticity wears no masks. So, and actually, in a very deeply realized state, pretending uh, feels kind of strange and incongruent, and I would say even difficult to pull off. So, which is not to say also. So, what what I can say is that even though everything is different, everything is also still at the same time the same. So it's the same trees, it's the same mountains, it's the same world. The difference is that whether before I was in an argument with it, because I was in an argument with myself, now I am in agreement with it because I'm no longer in an argument with myself. And so it's the same world, just more beautiful. more vivid, more enjoyable. I am free to enjoy my life. I'm free to enjoy the world. One time I said that nirvana is samsara in serenity. That's the only difference. And there was a question on Quora, what was the most kind of baffling, the most surprising part of the spiritual path? And I answered it like this. I said it was that I ended up precisely where I started, just without any drama. So
Trauma seems weird now, like with a little bit of satori, a little bit of distance from the identity. I noticed that thing. The word drama pops into mind because so many things are so dramatic, and you
Mhm.
say to somebody, it's like you love all your loved ones, but imagine if after they passed, you didn't have the aching, prolonged grief. Instead, you didn't have that, and it's like you can almost imagine somebody taking something monstrous from that. Like, what are you
Yes.
detached? It's like, no, you doesn't mean you don't value them when they're there, but there's what if you took the dramatic aspect out that says I'm in pain, and so I like Shakespeareanly have to act out this pain because it's I was just pontificating about that, in
But you
that realm.
see, I understand what you're saying, but you see, positioning it this way, describing it this way, doesn't actually help because you cannot uh, uh, stop the dramas, so to speak, and settle deeply into peace without having enjoyed all your drama. So you need to kind of enjoy it, allow yourself to enjoy it to completion, to resolution.
Right,
So enlightenment includes the realization that everyone is going to die, including myself, including all of my loved ones.
right.
So I cried rivers of tears uh, about this fact.
So it's like a karmic thing, like it's like a karma that needs to work itself out or something.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
You can look at it from this perspective. You can look at it at all of this drama and all of this crying and self-exorcism, which you mentioned previously, as cleaning, purifying of of karma. But you can also look at it from a perspective of basic humanity and say that enlightenment is the realization of death, and it's a very deep understanding that this life is fleeting, that this life is impermanent, and everyone is going to die. And once you actually cry your tears about it, including the tears for yourself, then you're free to actually enjoy the people and love them for what you are without trying them to change. Because
Right.
because it's, anyone could imagine the situation where when they lived with a loved one, and this loved one, let's say, is diagnosed with a terminal illness, and they have like 1 month left to live, and then suddenly the whole attitude towards this person completely changed. You
Yeah.
only have 1 month to enjoy. What is there to change? What is there to berate them for? What is there to nitpick? What is there to dislike? We don't have much time. So enlightenment is kind of like that, but it takes place on the level of the psyche. And so it doesn't mean that your body will die during this process. It doesn't mean that anything bad will happen to you during this process, but this appreciation of the beauty and the fleeting nature of life and how fragile it is, and how beautiful it is, and how fragile everyone else is, and how beautiful they are. And you're never going to get another one. And so this appreciation, this apprehension opens up the heart tremendously. So yes, during this process there is drama. It's not possible to kind of end up in it's not through some trick of consciousness that you end up in a place with no drama. It's not through some insight of concentration that you end up in a place with no drama. It's exclusively through allowing yourself to experience everything that comes up in meditation, on psychedelic trips, in life, as the insight deepens and matures, and you cry out of compassion for how people live and how they are necessarily be, cruel to themselves, just due to forgetting this very simple life fact of life, that we're all here for a fleeting moment, and there's nothing better than to just enjoy this life and love each other. We forget because we are hurt, because we were wounded, because we carry offenses, we carry resentment, you see, and it goes all all the way up to killing each other and starting wars or participating in wars. So, so all of this kind of gets resolved and dissolved through quite a difficult emotional experience. The most work on the spiritual path is emotional. But to come back to what you address your audience with, the good news is that, first of all, you don't lose your creativity, you don't lose your humanity, you don't lose your sense of humor. So the process itself can be quite long, and for most people, it's a long life journey. I was in a quite privileged position because I didn't have to work. I still had some savings from my Google time, and I was basically doing nothing but that. And my wife supported me. So I was practicing, I was meditating, I was using psychedelics and purifying the mind, exhausting more and more of the conditioning and all the pain that exists in me. Most people are not in this position. So most of my students have to combine it with life, they have combined it with work, they have combined it with career. And at times it can become excruciatingly difficult. So that's the historic function of monasteries, so that you go into some place where no
Yeah.
one bothers
Yeah.
you, and there are people who understands you, understand what you're going through, so that you can cry and wail and rage and have all of those experiences in an understanding environment. But when
Western society isn't really geared for like allowing the fertile ground for this to like take place. And as you're talking about all this stuff, that's a lot of what I'm thinking about is like your average American or Canadian, they got bills to pay, man. They gotta cut the lawn on Saturday. They like it seems very difficult, and like you almost gotta baby step it for the most people. They gotta take the long path. Like
yes,
you do hear a lot of stories of like spontaneous enlightenment or something that happened very quick, like in your situation. But is it common for like someone in like their 60s or 70s to just like wake up one day and be like, I think I'm awakened? Like it finally hits them, or like is that a common thing? Do you think?
uh, it's not very common. It's actually quite rare. Even along the spiritual teachers, it's quite rare. What it depends on, I don't know. It's a mystery, right? But like for example, it was the case with Tolle. It was the case with Osho. This kind of very deep, abiding, profound awakenings. But even very mature and good teachers like Adyashanti, who's a very mature and good teachers, very deeply established in awareness, very mature. Uh, Even for him, it was a back and forth process in the beginning, and for most people it is. And he kind of committed his life to it, and most people are not in a position to do that. So you're
Yeah.
right. For most people, kind of they have to baby step it. But the good news is that every time you work on deep deepening your level of acceptance of your emotional experience on the sensate experiential level, like spending time with your rage, allowing yourself to cry, opening up your heart to all of you, to this inner child within you, to the wounded child within you. Every time you do that, you not only move closer to this coveted goal of enlightenment, which isn't even very important to realize, ultimately we're all going to die. So, but you become more emotionally mature, you become less impulsive, you become less driven by passions, which means pains, and you're more driven by your heart, by love, by compassion, and by reason. So, so the so this work, whether it happens before self-realization, before abiding awareness sets in, or after, uh, for most people, the bulk of it actually happens after because the journey is very deep. Uh, but but even before, it is still very important work. So speaking of old people, you mentioned, people at 60, 70. So I've worked also in teaching capacity with people who are 60, 70, and just all of my observation led me to say that most people who are in 60, 70, not all of them, Absolutely not all of them, but quite a lot of people in their 60s, 70s are more aware, from my perspective, that a lot of people who are in their 20s and they say, I'm infinite consciousness, I'm the limited, I'm the unlimited self, and things like that. Because the degree to which you are loving, understanding, compassionate, and wise is not whether you had the experiential shift to being conscious. This actually, believe it or not, this doesn't have much to do with it. It happens sooner or later as you go on the spiritual journey, but you might not even notice it if it was like very, very. I've spoken to some people who say, I don't even know when it happened. But the degree to which you are aware, the degree to which you are equanimous and loving, is just the degree to which you still resist some pains, some fears, some anger, some tears. And people who are open, uh, they tend to do it less and less with age because death looms closer. And they've been through a lot of shit. They've been through a lot of drama. The closer the death is, the more a person naturally begins to understand what is important in life and what actually isn't. And it's just pettiness. And people who deeply rejected, who deeply resisted, they just became kind of neuropsychotic closer to the end of life. They became very bitter. They became very resentful. But quite a lot of people, quite a lot of old people, are much more mature, from my perspective, than some young people who had very profound experience in consciousness, maybe even on the ongoing basis, because it's much more about the suffering that is still left in you, the pain that is still left in you, that leads to impulsive behavior, hatred, ill will, bad action, wrong action, as they would say in Buddhism. And that's the most overlooked part in all of the modern spirituality, which is too technical to my liking. Of course, there are very mature teachers, like Adyashanti is one of them, but the technical attainments are not real attainments. I just wanted to like say one thing to address the viewers, which we don't want to frighten, right? So, uh, so you will not lose your mind, you will not lose your creativity, you will not lose the things that you like. It, it only may be temporarily. So those experiences may feel like you're going crazy. It may feel like you're losing something. Uh, but enlightenment actually isn't losing anything. It is the willingness to lose everything. So it is quite possible to be at any location on the spiritual journey, including being completely enlightened, like basically Buddhahood. It's quite possible to be that, and be a comedian, and be an artist, a car driver, a taxi driver, a builder, anything like that. So what you love in life will only flower, and your heart and your intellect will only flower. So it can be a painful process, but the deeper you are, the closer you are to your heart, the more you love, the better your life becomes.
Well, what's better news than that?
Yeah.
That's great news. And I was just thinking about the different sorts of paths, like the long path, the person who's kind of doesn't want to go so much, the person who's dragging their heels versus the person that happens rapid, and everything seems like a net positive. And I'm even imagining sort of different like reversals of things. Like I'm imagining, because I noticed a lot changed for me when I cleaned up my lifestyle. Even it's like, wow, like meditating is not nearly as painful. Now I can actually like do the thing where I'm observing my thoughts. If you're going into meditation and you're like itching and your leg and you're cramped up and you drank a million coffees that day, so you're vibrating with energy, how the heck are you supposed to even, you just run away with every thought after every thought. And I was curious why that version of it, from certain very prominent, popular, enlightened people, doesn't get talked about more as like, well, have you tried like cleaning your act up first? Like a lot of time it seems like many people go right to this is the practice for this is the practice for like breaking the spell of your mind, and it's good practice in my opinion. I like Angelo DeLulio. He's another YouTuber guy that talks a lot about and you can sit down and start with guided meditations and then start to do it yourself and break the conditioning. But it's amazing what certain things are prior to maybe some Satori experiences, and then afterwards, like you said, at one point I was just meditating all the time. I was automatically meditating. That's an interesting feeling. It almost is like, well, what was I doing before? If I can go into a state where I'm sort of automatically meditating, like, looking at my thoughts from a meditative perspective, then what was I doing when I was sitting before? Just like constant concentration that my posture's right, and is anyone looking at me meditating? Like, well, this is going to be so awesome when I'm enlightened. So I suppose my question couched in there somewhere would be, do you do that with your classes? Do you ever suggest, if you see someone stuck, would you be like, well, maybe drop this? Are you still addicted to stuff? Drop that. Are you still feeding into dramatic, toxic sort of relationships? Drop that, and then maybe it'll create fertile ground for enlightenment. Is that a factor?
It can be, yes. That's actually a great question. Because most teachers don't talk about it, and I myself didn't talk about it before. So there is some profound truth in getting the realization first and embodying it through the continued shadow work, alignment work, and seeing, just observing how your life gets into order. There's profound truth to that. Like Muji once said, and he said very correctly, and I like this quote very much. He said, all the good habits manifest spontaneously in a liberated mind. There is some truth to that, yes. However, it does not mean that it cannot come also from a different perspective. So you see, the thing is, the bad habits that we have are self-defeating. Every bad habit that you have, whether it's like a coping mechanism, alcohol addiction, is self-defeating. Some self-defeating behavior pattern in your relationship. Every bad habit is a game against yourself. Now, the interesting thing is that when you stop doing that, just like any addiction, you will invariably get exposed to the pain that was driving you the self-defeated behavior.
Self-exorcism time.
Yes,
Go to that bed,
yes,
roll around and cry.
yes, exactly. And so it's a way. So one way to get to the existing patterns and pains and wounds of the mind is through meditation practice, contemplative practice, somatic practices, psychedelic practice, lots of things. Another way is to actually change your behavior. Like, for example, try not to engage in angry outbursts, or start being much more honest than you were before, or try to stop coping mechanisms. Now, the issue with the latter, and why it's not for everyone, is because this is also what we are told to do in an inauthentic, subjugating way. It's like, do this, don't eat this, this is bad for you. This is without any understanding, without any explanation, but just do this or you will get punished.
The opposite of loving your sin to death. If somebody boldly goes into their sin and rides it till the wheels come off, then they go, I know exactly why I don't do that.
Exactly. So some minds, some minds also will take a kind of a disciplinatory approach and punishing approach towards establishing the right habits. And if that's the case, then the habits will never last. Then there's always a temptation to go into the bad habit again, because the pain underneath the habit was not exhausted. So if you do have a certain level of awareness already that allows you to consciously stop a self-defeating behavior and witness the mind's tantrum, witness the mind's objection to it.
I love that, the mind's tantrum.
And giving love to the pain that will come up, giving love to all of these objections, dissolving it into light consciousness, that it can be very, very, very good. If you're not there yet, then the most important thing is to love yourself, learn to love everything about you, and deepen your understanding this way. Gain an understanding about why you're doing the self-defeating behaviors. Even though you will keep doing them, observe them. Look at what's happening when you do them. Look at why you're pulled to do that. Next time, try not to do it. If it fails, don't be harsh towards yourself. Don't punish yourself. Nothing can be changed at one instant. So it's a very kind of personal approach. Some people can do that. Some people's minds make it into another judgment, like, oh, you ate this hamburger again, you fat pig, and this will make you want to eat more. You see?
Brilliant.
Yeah, there's also like a supplementing thing too. That can be a little bit of a trap. So I see people sometimes they rotate their vices, so it gives an appearance. It's like tricking the ego that they're actually doing something.
Well, the ego hides everywhere. The ego hides in supplementing it. Yeah. One thing I feel like it does sometimes, it hides in parts of my body. It's like the ego, it feels like it will hide in a limb or something, like just draw your attention everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not a thing that has a specific physical location in the body, but you can say that all tensions in the body come from ego. The pains come from ego, and they all need love. They all need love. The ego cannot go away. The ego cannot be killed. The ego cannot be destroyed. The ego cannot be disowned. None of this works. It can only be given attention to. It can only be given love to in a similar way how you give attention to a hurting, crying child. That's the only way.
Here's kind of like a weird question. What does like an advanced society look like where it doesn't have to go through this process of building an ego and then having to destroy it? Like, what would child rearing look like? Because we were talking a bit before about how we kind of make this happen. This is kind of like our fault because of all the trauma we do to each other. Do you have any visions of what that might look like, or like a new world?
Yeah, I can make some informed speculation from my own experience. Well, first of all, you're right. Most of adults are actually children in adult bodies. They never grow up, so they still cool, callous, and petty, and they bring up children the same way. So, is it possible, in my view, to have a completely nice society? Absolutely, because it's a natural state of consciousness. How close we are to it, we're very far. Very far. So we are talking about, like, if we're talking about completely nice society, we're probably talking about centuries. Even there is much more awareness right now. There's much less violence right now in the society than at the times of Gautama Buddha or Jesus Christ. But even Gautama, with the success of his teachings, which is unprecedented. I mean, billions of people follow the teachings. Only made a dent. So most of the progress was actually made by the advancement of technology, which is kind of strange, but that's what it is. The free exchange of information. So the more we became open and transparent, it promotes honesty and it promotes knowledge about what is really happening, what war is really like. For example, of course, most entertainment movies glorify war, but if you watch documentaries about war, you will be horrified. Like real honest
documentaries. It's like anti-enlightenment. It's like life isn't even worth it unless you're fighting, unless you're in. So get out there because this is what life's about. It's pretty crazy, and sometimes that stuff can be pretty salacious. Like I saw a movie recently, I was telling James, where I was like, I can feel my dopamine and serotonin crackling in my brain, and I'm going to have a big down from this. And then I was thinking about the themes of the movie, and they were all very sleepy themes, like go back to bed, go chase some things, and just grind your life away with these, like, in reaction to fear of being some kind of a failure or something like that. It was like, I gotta just get present here for a sec, because you can run away with the themes that are so present in media and entertainment
Oh
and
yes.
drama.
Oh yes. It's a profoundly sick society. So it caters to the wounds of the ego extraordinarily efficiently. And not only it caters to them extraordinarily efficiently, but it made an extraordinarily efficient business out of it.
Oh yeah, it's all
So
business.
yes, and so if we are talking about a society which is truly enlightened, where like most people don't have this, then the break of childhood attachment, which is natural, so a natural childhood attachment to their parents, uh, is predicated on their inability to feed for themselves, nothing else. So basically, a chick uh, breaks the attachment from her mother and father birds when the mother and father push the chick out of the window, out the window. That would be fun.
Out of the
Out
nest.
the nest, and start showing them where the food is without putting the food in their mouths. That's pretty much the only natural attachment. And like any attachment, it is unpleasant. The chick is scared. It doesn't want that. But that's pretty much the only natural attachment. So in the human society, this would happen around the time of puberty. And so after puberty, everyone is an adult, right? So we live in the opposite society where like no one is adult even at 15, almost no one.
Yeah.
And so you would see a society which much more resembles the kind of natural life without unnecessary cruelty to one another. We don't have any reasons to be cruel to one another. We have enough resources to feed everyone. We have enough knowledge and enough advancement in science to feed everyone. We just cannot agree on who gets whom because we're in this continued competition of each other and one-upping each other, and all the cruelty is also coming with that. So you would see a society where there is no unnecessary cruelty, where things that need to take precedence, like for example, the feeding people who cannot eat, or healthcare or good education, take precedence effortlessly, and with public consensus over things like luxurious yacht for someone, or like some trappings of success and prestige. People
Be
would not.
embarrassing. Could be like an embarrassment. Like,
It would be.
why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this harm to yourself by driving around in a unconventional, like an unuseful monstrosity, lost in the world of status illusion?
Exactly. Yes. So the things that really matter would take precedence effortlessly and instantly.
Beautiful.
And the
Let's
thing
do
and the
it,
things that don't.
everyone.
Unfortunately, it's going to take a little time. So I will try to make that. Hopefully, hopefully I live a long life, and I'll do what I can. But then I'll die, and it will continue for quite some time. So I hope we won't destroy ourselves beforehand.
Oh,
Yeah.
The
No.
biggest, like all of the massive threats, the three most fundamental threats to human civilization is nuclear war, climate change, and AI, super intelligent AI, not just AI, but super intelligent AI. And we're pursuing all three of them with strictly due to egoic reasons. So the amount of effort, uh, human capital, creative capital, and just effort that is wasted in our society, that does not go into elevating society's well-being, but goes into uh, uh, satisfying someone's whims. It's
Yeah.
insane. I,
It
I would say,
exploits. It
yeah,
exploits. It's just left, right, and center. Almost everything's an exploitation, and I believe that the path of truth, like say prior to enlightenment, you decide I'm gonna go reverse style. I'm gonna be as truthful as I imagine an enlightened person would be. I feel like that's a challenge and a half. Go be truthful in every situation, and giant limbs of egoic stuff will start being lopped off. It'll be like, oh, I have nothing now. Because almost everywhere I go to participate, you got to be willing to lie, engage in the drama, engage in this delusion type stuff. It's a huge encouragement to see so many people that are actually willing to be a person such as yourself, run classes, get it out there. That's an encouragement. I think that's like the good news, is that people seem to be waking up a bit and getting more conscious.
Maybe a good place for like kind of like a last question here might be, if there's someone who kind of like stumbled across a video like this and curiosity hit them and they were like, where does this begin? Where do I even start here? What would you suggest to that person?
Good question. I would suggest two things. I would suggest establishing a meditation practice. You can begin slowly. You can begin by meditating 20 minutes a day. You can begin by focusing on your breath, which can already be a very interesting experience and can show you that there's much more going on in your consciousness than just your thought. The separated state, the dream state, is characterized by continually thinking and not paying much attention to anything. So even the breath meditation can be a very interesting experience. There are some self-compassion meditations out there for those who are deeply struggling. I myself don't have any published meditations yet. I do meditation with my students. I do meditation on my retreats. I meditated myself for thousands of hours. But I don't have, I have not yet released a YouTube video with a guided meditation, but I will, but there are other teachers there. There are other teachers there that have very good meditations. So that's one thing that I would suggest. Another thing that I would suggest is read. So I would invite you to my website, www.truefreedom.org. There are a lot of writings there on the topic of enlightenment. I would invite you to watch my Satsangs and see if it moves your heart. So reading and listening to Satsangs, listening to masters and teachers can be a profoundly moving experience. But when you do that, don't try to grasp all of it with your mind. If you don't understand something, just don't worry about it. But listen to it with your heart. Listen meditatively, read meditatively, see what the words create in you, what they arise in you. So I have a lot of writings. If you read them and you don't like them very much, read some other teachers. Read Adyashanti, read Osho, read whoever resonates with you, read whoever touches your heart. The journey of enlightenment is about coming back to yourself. The interesting thing about enlightenment is there is absolutely nothing that I know that you don't. Nothing at all. Not a single thing that I know that you don't.
What are we doing here?
Well, the problem is that you just know many other things that are simply not true. And so all insights on the spiritual path, they have the flavor of remembrance. If it doesn't have the flavor of, I've always known that, I was just confused, then it's not an authentic insight. And so no teacher can give you some knowledge. All knowledge is already in you, all of it. So like the Buddha says, be the light unto yourself. So if you go inwards, if you start exploring yourself, if you take a very honest, sincere interest into what it's like to be you, every single day, what it's like to be you, what is happening in you, what is crying in you, what is joyful in you, how it feels like to be you, and you take this interest deeper and deeper and deeper, then invariably it will lead you to a very, very beautiful place, because all the beauty, all the peace, all the bliss, it is there. You have just forgotten.
Wow.
I was wondering if I could squeak in one more quick question.
Sure, go.
And it's kind of in the realm of the subconscious, because you mentioned that, so one aspect of it is, how do you perceive pain now? Emotions, you're not suffering the emotion stuff anymore, but I'm curious about how you perceive pain, like physical pain, and then the other side of it is, let's say you've got some awareness behind you. You're starting to get the ball rolling. the awareness has led you to, naturally sort of change some things, but you still notice things that feel like emotions prior to thought. It's like, it's one thing to go, notice how your thoughts are attached to your feelings. So if I think, oh, what's this person thinking about me? I feel anxious. But what of the feelings that arise seemingly prior to thought? Like, as soon as I see something, there's an emotional reaction. I haven't even had a thought about it yet consciously, but there's a reaction. Or when I go to meditate, I'm sitting there, I'm watching my thoughts, I'm getting some distance from it, but all of a sudden there's a fear in there, spontaneous fear or something. And how does that relate to the subconscious? Is the subconscious a real thing? I wanted to see what you thought about that.
Okay, I'll answer the second question first.
Sure.
So yes, the subconscious is a real thing, in a way that not in a way that it's a thing, but in a way that you could say that there are some difficult energies pent up in your neural system. You can also speak about it. You can speak about the subconscious as unresolved past, right? So completely enlightened mind is basically a mind that carries no unresolved past. It's a mind unburdened by the past. It does not mean that there would not be any bad experiences in the future. But the bad experiences in the past have been made peace with. The problem of the dream state, of the separate state, is because we forbid ourselves to fully express what we feel, especially when we are mistreated in childhood, because the child is not expected to. See, child is not expected to get angry at his parents, so stop crying, things like that. Obey, obey, obey. So or earn our love by being this, right? So we suppress the reaction to mistreatment, and this reaction is still can manifest in dreams as triggers, and that's basically the subconscious. It's not a thing in itself, right? So you can say, from this perspective, enlightenment is clearing of the subconscious, not in the way that you will suddenly start feeling how your liver works, like directly, not that kind of subconscious, but the psyche, the psyche, the formation of this character, of this coping mechanism to deal with all of that, because that's what a personality is. A personality is a coping mechanism to deal with all of that. And so from that perspective, quite a lot of experiences there are going to be pre-verbal, actually, because believe it or not, we get mistreated, and not only actively mistreated, but basically any unnatural behavior of a caregiver towards the child will result in this. Denied unconditional love, for example.
Passively mistreated.
Yes, yes, neglected or being disapproved of, right? In the natural state of things, the parent can correct the child, but there's never any ill will, there's never any anger, there's never any lack of love towards the child. In the human society, it's not the case. So a lot of let's say trauma, we can actually talk about the ego as the complete is the sum total of all trauma. So a lot of the trauma is pre-verbal. So quite a lot of emotions, they can come up without any thought narrative, or that you can have a vague understanding or just a couple of words about it, and actually the story is not very important. So detaching from the mind, from the thought train itself, is a good practice, but never try to detach from the actual experience. So
Let yourself feel it every
yes,
single time. If it's
exactly.
even if it's chronic anxiety, like just watch it. Because one thing I feel like you can't always. It seems like it's harder to apply awareness depending on where you are. If I'm sitting alone meditating and anxiety rises up, attention can go to it and it'll dispel oftentimes. But if you're out in public and you're like, why am I, like I know what character to be here, but I feel anxious in my body.
The reason you feel anxious when you're in public is just because you're being seen. You see, and
Yeah.
you're anxious of other people's judgment. You see, when you're alone, you're not exposed to other people's judgments. That's how we get conditioned. We're conditioned by disapproval. You're a good boy if you do this, and you're a bad boy if you do that. If you do this, then we will praise you. If you do that, then we will punish you, and that creates a lot of suppressed fear. So all people are quite judgmental in this way. And then if you were raised in this way, and most people were raised in this way, you become judgmental yourself.
Yeah.
So if you when you're in society, you invariably exposed to much deeper fear of judgment than when you're in meditation. So a lot of my students, they get to the place where they can get more or less comfortable in meditation, but then they go out in the world and like, ooh, everything hurts again. People hurt. I look at this person,
Yes.
he looked at me funny, and there's the same fear that I experienced when I was like 5 year old, you
And then
see?
you project onto people. It must be
Exactly.
them.
Exactly, precisely, precisely. And it's them from some perspective, they serve as a trigger, right? But it's you, and from the perspective of the ultimate spirituality, they're giving you grace, they're giving you an opportunity to explore how you
Yes.
react to that. So the people who find themselves in this situation when meditation is easy, but society is hard, I start pushing them out into society. And so the way that you deal with it is exactly the same way as you do in meditation. You go into this anxiety yourself. There's no such thing as chronic anxiety. Chronic anxiety means that there's just something is unresolved and it shows up. uh, it reminds it reminds you of that stubbornly until you give it enough attention. I mean, once you are aware, of course, like we're talking about the purification, we talk about the spiritual transformation. So whenever an anxiety comes up, take your attention directly into it. Find its center. Like
Even
go
if you're in
where it's
public.
supposed. What's that?
Even if you're in public.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
if you're in public. Yeah. Well, unless maybe the circumstance requires your attention. But if you
Right.
like, it requires your performance, for example, right?
Yeah.
Then you can temporarily put that aside and say, I'll practice this later. But if you're like sitting in a cafe and overhearing something, or caught someone looking at you like wrong way, or somebody told you something rude, and you
You can watch yourself.
exactly. So close
Imagine
your
the
eyes.
person going, "Hey, what's with you?" Because something that happens when you're growing up is people go, "What's with you? You seem sad. Where's the smile?" Give poke you on the shoulder, scare you, frighten you. There's all this like conditioning that constantly happens, and I'm imagining being in a social situation, something happens that triggers you, and then you kind of go inward, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "Well, I'm going inward because I feel anxious." Like, what the? What are you doing?
So what, you never felt anxious,
Right.
or if someone or if,
Yeah.
or if someone tells you like, why are you sad? Where's the smile? You can tell them that you don't have to smile all the time. Right now,
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
sad, and you
Yes.
enjoy your sadness, and you have reasons to be sad.
That's a better society, in my
You're
opinion.
sad. You have reasons.
Honesty.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But actually, don't worry. Most of the time, well, unless with your friends or close ones, then you can get into conversations like this, and they can be very vulnerable and very healing, actually, and intimate for both you and the other person, And if you just honestly say, "Well, I don't know why I'm sad," or "I'm sad because of this, this, and that," like I cannot be laughing right now. I'm sad because I have just realized this, this, and that. Then if this person loves you, you will have a very different interaction. They will probably extend some compassion towards you, right? But in public, in general public, like in a cafeteria and stuff like that, don't worry. Most people will not approach you, will not say anything. And if you just sit at the table with your eyes closed, most people will not say anything. And if they
They'll
ask
do
you,
the opposite. They'll leave you the
yeah,
hell alone.
exactly, exactly. So sometimes you just go out and you feel what is perceived to be in consciousness in the mind as literal like energies, as bad vibes coming directly from other people. And
Yeah.
I experienced all this as well. So it's important it can be practice, you go to a cafe, sit down and just feel the vibes, feel the energies from other people, because they're also yours. It feels like they're coming from other people, but it's important to integrate them, to familiarize yourself with them, just like every fear, every anxiety, because it is still a part of your conscious experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well
Well,
said.
time has flown. Artem, I just want to say thanks so much. You've been an amazing guest,
Absolutely.
very elegant, and you explained everything so clear and precise. It was awesome. Maybe to close things out, maybe you could let our audience know, where they can find you, what you got going, and all that good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So I have a nonprofit organization. It's called True Freedom Teachings. The website is true-freedom.org. I will also be providing all the links to James and Justin to put in the description of the video. It will be below.
Hmm.
And I live in Northern California. I teach in person if you wish to visit me. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, but I also do video meetings. You can schedule a video meeting with me on my website. Uh, we do live satsangs in Santa Cruz. So if you're in San Francisco Bay Area, please write me a message. There is an email if you wish to participate. We also do intensive integration retreats where we do mostly this kind of work that we discussed with James and Justin, the emotional work, the energetic work. Those are 3-day retreats. We do them in Northern California. We'll have our first one in France and Europe. So those are 3-day retreats where we go deep into ourselves. And I do video satsangs on my YouTube channel. There's a Discord community which you can join. So you can contact me through various social platforms. They're all listed on my website. So the website kind of links to all of that. And I wish every one of you happiness and peace, the same happiness and peace that I found. And please know, my dear listeners, that there is nothing wrong with you. There never have been. And every struggle, every pain can be overcome, can be loved, can be healed.
Awesome. Beautiful. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. You're an awesome guest. Take care.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.